Hello everybody. Today we're going to learn about solving quadratic equations, and our first strategy that we use to solve quadratic equations is by factoring. So in general, when we want to solve a quadratic equation, we want to find what values of x will make the equation true. So there's a lot of different ways to ask for it, but they all mean the same thing at the end of the day, whether it's find the x-intercept, the roots, the zeros, or the solutions. You need to find x when y is 0. So here is how we usually report our solutions, because with quadratics we can have multiple solutions. They tend to be listed in between curly brackets. So this tells us that the x values, the solutions to this, whatever problem it was, is -1 and 4. So this isn't an ordered pair, but it's basically telling us the x-intercepts on the graph. So -1, 0, and 4, 0 could be points on my graph, but just make sure you know the difference. The curly brackets means these are the possible values of x. Okay, and now the general strategy for factoring, solving for factoring. First step is factor, making sure that you factor when the equation is equal to 0, and then you can set each factor equal to 0 and solve for x. So let me explain why that is. We already know how to factor, so let me just explain step number 2 and how that works. That just has to do with the zero property of multiplication. Basically, if we want to multiply and make a product that is 0, one of those factors must be 0 in order for that to happen. So either x plus 5 is 0 or 2x plus 3 is 0. Either situation works. You're just setting up two mini equations and doing the algebra to get x by itself. So in this case, x is -5 and x is -3/2. We're going to be learning a variety of tools to solve quadratic functions, so I just want to tell you that a positive of this method is it's very useful if you can factor the quadratic function, and it doesn't work if the quadratic function cannot be factored. So you can't use this 100% of the time, but it's pretty useful when you see nice factors of your quadratic equation. Okay, enough of that. Let's get into actually doing the work. All right, so it's already set equal to 0. I'm ready to factor. And I'm just going to go through this quickly, not really explain it because you should already know how to do that by now. I'll use the box method. So some factors that multiply to make -24 and add up to 2, that's going to be +6 and -4. So we can write factored form as x plus 4 times x plus 6 equals 0. So you factored. Now you just set each of these factors here in parentheses equal to 0. You've got two mini equations to solve. So x can be -4 and x can be -6. You can leave it like this, or you can add in the curly brackets for extra fancy effect. Now this next one, we have a quadratic aspect to it, but it's all jumbled up. We need to make it all on one side. So I'm going to move this 2x over to the left-hand side, subtract 2x from each side. And now that it's equal to 0, we are ready to factor. So this is one without a c term. So that's a slightly different way of factoring. Looking at these two terms, they both have x as a common factor. So I'm going to factor out an x, and that leaves behind 3x minus 2 in the parentheses. So now I have two factors that multiply to make 0. So I'm going to set each of them equal to 0. So my solutions to this problem are where x is 0 and where x is 2/3. The main thing is the factoring and then just doing some algebra at the end. Now let's look at another example on the back. Here it is not quite equal to 0, so we need to get rid of this -5 by moving it to the left-hand side. We're going to add 5 to each side. That gives us x squared minus 11x plus 24 equals 0. Now I'm going to set up my box for factoring. So we need factors that add up to -11 but make 24. I'm thinking that's going to be a -8 and a -3. So that factors to x minus 8 times the quantity of x minus 3. That's step 1 done. Now, just set them equal to 0. So x can be 8, and x can also be equal to 3. There's my two solutions. And lastly, we've got one where a is not 1, so our box method factoring is a little bit more complicated. That's really all we have to worry about. I'm going to write my AC term off to the side, -140, and that's where I'm drawing my factors. I need to add up to -31. So I'm just going to start listing some factors here. So I forgot 4 and 35 are factors. Forgot about 4. So we're going to have a -35 and a +4. So my two factors are 7m plus 4 and m minus 5. And now that they're factored, I'm going to set both of those equal to 0. And then just completing that algebra, I get that m is -4/7 and m is also 5. Okay, so that's how you solve by factoring. Just factor, then set each term equal to 0, and you shouldn't have a problem at all. All right, thank you.